Hi-ho everyone! Thanksgiving just passed, yet you still have that tingling cooking impulse, or maybe you have leftover pumpkin you don't know how to use. Let's make an Italian recipe, pumpkin cappellacci. You'll need just some pumpkin or a squash, eggs, Parmigiano cheese, semolina flour, a lemon, salt, pepper, and some nutmeg. Let's start with the pumpkin. Here I'm using a butternut squash, but you can really use any kind of pumpkin you like. First of all, we need some coarse puree, so I start by peeling it using a vegetable peeler. Remember that the exposed flesh can be slippery, so please be careful not to peel your finger alongside the vegetable, okay? Now we need to cook this bad boy, and I think that steaming it is going to give some great feeling to the stuffing. So I am going to first carefully cut it in half, since this pumpkin is over a kilo and I'm gonna need only 450 grams of it. You can actually cook the whole pumpkin and keep it in the freezer for later use. For example, if you want some Halloween throwback on Christmas Eve and you decide to make a pumpkin pie. Here I am cutting it into more manageable pieces first, and then cubing it to better fit my pot. There are a ton of ways to cook a pumpkin, like roasting it in the oven, cooking it sous vide, steaming it using a dedicated steamer, or the easiest way possible, a pot. I'm not even going to use a steaming basket, just a pot with a lid and a splash of water like a centimeter just to cover the bottom of the pot. This way is going to be ready in about 15 minutes from when the water starts to boil. While the pumpkin is cooking, we can start to work on the delicious casing for it. Fresh pasta is made from just two ingredients. Flour, in this case I'm using 100% semolina flour to keep it more traditional, but you can easily use all-purpose flour or remix of the two. Here I'm using 300 grams of flour. And of course you need eggs. That's it, not even salt or water. Easy. I start by cracking 3 eggs into the flour and roughly mixing them in with a fork until there are no wet spots anymore. I'll advise not to use a whisk, or it is going to be a pain to fish every bit of pasta from it, cause then we're turning it onto the table to knead it a little bit. This will better mix the two ingredients and will result in a smoother, more workable dough down the line when we'll be assembling the cappellacci. So get your mustard ready for some light workout using your wrist for the most part. It's not that difficult, just a little bit intimidating at first maybe. Right now the dough is still not hydrated enough, cause the flour needs some time to absorb the eggs well. This is the reason why we started to make it right away, and it is also the reason why we are covering it with plastic wrap and keeping it in the fridge to rest for at least 30 minutes and up to an hour before starting to work on it in any way. After the rest, it will be more pliable and elastic, and in general easier to roll out and make it thinner without tearing. Here you can see that through movie magic we have the cooked pumpkin ready and cooled to about room temperature. It is important that the flesh is not hot or it will cook the egg when we'll add it. As said, we need a coarse puree, so we'll smash it with a fork. Try not to leave any chunk in there, but using a fork will ensure that it won't be too smooth. This is more or less the consistency that we are aiming for, so I'll stop torturing this fella and I'll set it aside for now while we work on the cheese. 120 grams of grated Parmigiano to be specific. So now I am going to grate it and you know what, I am too lazy for that. Let's just... Okay, much better. I'll now retrieve the pumpkin so we can begin to work on the filling. First of all, we start by adding our cheese, grated through movie magic, and mixing it in at incredible high speed. That's actually mandatory, so don't skip this step. We need now some salt, so let's do a generous pinch of fine sea salt. Okay, maybe let's do a second generous pinch. Then some nutmeg, here I'm freshly grating it. Please don't use pre-ground spices, you'll make me sad. Okay, about the lemon. We need just the peel, so choose a lemon with edible rind, rinse and dry it, and we'll grate it directly into the bowl. We don't need a lot of it, the peel of a medium lemon like this should be enough. For this amount of filling, we are gonna need only one whole egg. As said before, be sure that your pumpkin is not hot or you get a pumpkin flavored scrambled egg, which is actually pretty good, but not what we are aiming for this time. Lastly, we need some freshly ground black peppercorn. Best way to get it is, of course, crushing it with your hand like the Hulk would do. The anger will enhance the flavor. See? Easy peasy pepper squeezy. Here is about a teaspoon worth. Okay, all the ingredients are in the bowl, so we need to incorporate them. Depending on your pumpkin, the filling may be a little too watery. If so, just add a little bit of breadcrumbs to reach a consistency more or less like this one. Remember who rested in the fridge? This fella! And now it's ready to be rolled into sheets. Cut a piece and keep the rest wrapped to prevent drying. I am using a manual machine, but using a rolling attachment for your stand mixer will make this step so much easier. Roll the dough into pretty thin sheet, cut it into squares and put a dollop of filling into the middle of each one. And here is a pecan for a single lucky cappellaccio. We now switch to the folding can. I start with the lucky one, and you see that I am not that good at forming them, but as always the first ones will be the ugliest, so don't be discouraged. To form the cappellaccio you need to wet two adjacent sides to make the pasta stick better, then fold it over itself to form a triangle. You need to make sure there is no air inside with the filling, or it will explode during cooking, releasing everything and leaving with your sad, broken piece of pasta. Close it well, then here I am cutting it using a crimping wheel. This is not necessary, it's just to make it look better. To form the final shape, you butter flour your hand a little bit so they don't stick to the pasta. Carefully lift it from the table, you should have floured as well, and using one or two fingers, depending on your hand size, fold the two pointy flaps over themselves to form a ring shape or a bizarre hat, which is what cappellaccio means in Italia. What a coincidence, huh? And here they are in all their glory, ready to be cooked. Bring a pot of salted water to a boil and cook for about 4 minutes. They are generally served with an all beef ragu or, like I'm doing here, with melted brown butter, sage and a generous grating of parmigiano. No movie magic this time, let's do it the old-fashioned way. Ah yeah, ain't it so much more satisfying? I should have done it this way for the filling too. And here they are, ready to be enjoyed. Tell us down in the comment what do you think of them and subscribe for more content. Have a great time!